Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're learning why we should stop pitching and start mapping. We're joined by Dr. Ryan O'Sullivan, a global account manager at IntroHive and host of Deal Talk, as well as the author of Building B2B Relationships. Ryan has built a framework used by global companies to win bigger deals faster. His approach is rooted in data, backed by field experience, and focused on long term growth, not just quick wins. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you very much, Rob. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here. Ryan, let's start by telling you have us by having you tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Well, I'll make it the short version, but I consider myself a salesman by trade. So started out new business salesperson historically. Uh, Worked for a big global consulting company called Infosys. Was there for 8.5 years. Worked in their strategic deals team, mapping the key execs for some of their big deals and doing similar type of analysis for strategic accounts as well. And also during that process, I'd understood the importance of relationships, and that's what led me to start the doctorate research. So that took me 7 years part time while I was working at at Infosys, and during that time, I found out about IntroHive, which is a software that actually helps you map relationships. So it was a bit of a match made in heaven, I guess, and moved over there. My current role, being here for 5 years. And as you very kindly waved the book in front of you there, that's a newly published book, just published at the beginning of the year. Took me about 18 months to put together. So all of my pearls of wisdom around the relationship mapping and measuring quality of relationships. So that's what's contained within that book, and something that I think has really turned out to be sort of my thing, I guess, as I look back now. I'm 46, so if I look back the last 10, 15 years, that's really where I've been focused on, is about identifying, mapping, and developing these key stakeholder relationships.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So, Ryan, I want to jump right into the topic of the day. What do you mean when you say start mapping?
Well, I think as you alluded to in the things about stop pitching, start mapping, and I can give you a bit of a backstory here. And I just told you my background, where I was working at this firm, and where I went from. Look, relationships are important. Nobody listening to this needs to be convinced that relationships matter. We all know that. We all experience it every day. So then I went, well, if relationships are important, what is a good relationship? And I spent 7 years researching that part time. It sounds quite a long time to say that out loud, but you can get your hands on my doctorate thesis just with my name and type in to Portsmouth University. You'll find the whole thing. I interviewed CXOs and a whole bunch of other stuff to really understand the detail around relationships. And as I was getting to the end of that, I realized that I actually missed a step out in that whole logical process. So relationships are important, but who do you need to build relationships with is a critical factor before you then determine, do we, or as an organization, have strong relationships with those individuals? Because too often, whether it's in prospect account or hunting side, or whether you're looking at key accounts, you tend to gravitate towards the people who you already have relationships with. If we think about this in the key account context, that's who you tend to gravitate to. But I'm really espousing the fact to take a step back, look at the account as a whole, look at the key individuals that matter, the executive suite and the key buying personas for your service lines, and identify them, literally map them. So identify and map the specific people that matter for you for that particular deal or for that particular account. And then you start the process of understanding the priorities, etc. So I think too often we can just get ahead of ourselves and start pitching, as we say, without really understanding the context, who the right people are, and sometimes spending too much time with people we're comfortable with or already know us, and not enough time with identifying the people that matter, and maybe using those relationships with who we know to get to the right people as part of a more broad strategy.
So, how exactly do you do that? How do you identify the 100 people who matter in a 200,000 person organization?
Yeah, good question. So the process I talk about in my book, and I'll summarize it now. It's a case of understanding your service lines. So let's take an example of a global IT services firm I'm currently working with. They have 12 service lines. You've got AI, they've got network services, they've got data analytics. So they've got these specific service lines. And then within each service line, you would have a typical buying persona. So let's just say if it's data analytics, you're looking at head of chief data officer, head of data, head of business intelligence. So these types of profiles, titles map to that specific service line. And if you do that across the 12 service lines and you look at their executive suite, you end up with a template really with this typical buying personas for that specific organization. And then if you apply that to an account, it can be a prospect account or it can be a key account, equally applies. And then you identify the specific people. The obvious place to go is LinkedIn or Sales Navigator, and specifically find the people that match those specific titles. So you do that as a project. It takes maybe an hour or two to pull that out, and then you basically have your initial identification and mapping of the key executives. So what you'll find when you do that type of analysis is you may well have a bank like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, or any other company for that matter, that have literally hundreds of thousands of employees generally and often on LinkedIn. But when you focus it like that, you'll end up with maybe 100, 150 people. And that's the entire map for everybody that matters to you. So that's your universe.
But what's the difference between a relationship map and a simple org chart? Does it really matter?
Yeah, so that in essence is a really big org chart. If you're able to then organize where those people fit, that takes a bit of work and some internal tribal knowledge, I guess. But you've got the executive suite, which is often on the website, so you can find the CEO, the reporting lines to the CEO, and you've got these other organizations. And if you understand the internal business units, you can start to cluster those people that you found in the right org structure. So that is quite a detailed organizational structure. But the important part comes, as you just suggested there, which is the relationship map side. So look, one thing I recognize from my new business days, and I'm talking about 20 years ago versus today, it was tough back then, but it's very, very difficult today with cold outreach. And how are you able to engage with people? I know we'll talk about social selling. We talk about engaging through social media and other forms, but it's so difficult now to do that from cold outreach, whether it's email or a phone or anything else. Well, more difficult than it's ever been. So what I'm espousing is to leverage the existing relationships. So this is where you start to build some context to that relationship map. You know who the people that matter, you know who they are now because you've identified them. So then it's a case of mapping on top of their existing relationships with those specific people. And then beyond that, you've got, well, who else do you know that can provide intelligence and a pathway to get to those people? So this is where the hard work starts. The identifying and initial mapping element that I described is literally a few hours work. But the way I describe the relationship lens that you put on that is around three different legs. So I won't go into all the details, but it's basically the internal relationship. So you look internally within your organization. You look externally, not including your company or the target company, and then you look at the target company. So if you go through your internal piece for a start, what you're looking at there is all the history. So what engagements have you had with that organization? What are the management? So you might need to walk the corridors a bit, understand from the CRM the different activities that have happened, the different proposals that have gone in. And also an interesting one is do a Boolean search on LinkedIn to identify who used to work at the prospect company or target company, but currently works at your company. And I did this for one of the client I was just talking about, and we were doing this for JP Morgan, and we realized they had 100 people that currently worked at their company that used to work at JP Morgan. So you start to build that insight internally. So just to get that perspective, and obviously with software like IntraHive, you get a complete perspective on who internally has the connected relationships, and you can get all that history as well, going back, as many years as you have it. So that's a summary on the internal piece. The external side is really about understanding the context of the partner ecosystem. So who have you got similar partners that could potentially help you? Who do you know as maybe an advisor or an industry leader that can give you some insights into that organization? And then another interesting one is, who do you know that used to work there that has since left? So this, if you're using LinkedIn, you can use Team Link to identify within your own organization people that have since left there. And if you do some searches, you can find people that were very senior, perhaps, because they've left, they're more willing to share intelligence about the organization, the competitor landscape, the different dynamics that are there, personal dynamics, personality wise, and other sort of business dynamics. And then the third leg is obviously the most important, which is internally within the organization itself. So who do you know within there? And doing that exercise with legs 1 and 2, you start to build a picture of who might be the friendly people to talk to, who on your side are the right people to engage with those individuals where there is a specific relationship. You also look for existing clients that have maybe moved and now work at that organization as well. So they've got a history with them. This is especially useful if it's a prospect account. I'll highlight a lot of people there that potentially know your organization. You've been successful for them, and now they happen to work at the prospect account. So you can do that analysis. And then the opposite of what I said before, who used to work at your company and now works at this organization. And the same example I just talked about with JP Morgan, we realized that 350 people, believe it or not, used to work at this global IT services firm and now worked at JP Morgan all over the world. And when you did the analysis, you start to see there's some very senior people in market in the US, in UK, in Europe, and you can leverage those relationships. So that is this mapping element, and it takes time, takes effort. I call it panning for gold. So you will understand when you find something that is potentially useful. And I think anyone that's been doing this for a while will realize that, one relationship is all that matters between either opening a new account or closing that deal or growing into a new pocket of business or region or entity, subsidiary maybe. So that's a summary of the mapping piece to the org chart.
I want to pick up on that last bit, but first I wanted to share. One of our viewers is saying, let's see, it's Duck Win shares, this is also the problem I'm facing right now. It's tough to know who my potential clients are. Duck, thank you for sharing that. Ryan, picking up on that last thought, how can I prioritize which stakeholders to build relationships with, especially in large accounts?
Well, look, the basic premise of building a relationship with any executive is you need to help them solve their problems. It's very simple, isn't it? Simple to say, difficult to do. So, who, having done that research, having identified who those key people are, having got some context to what they're working on, and having understood where you have existing relationships to leverage, my premise again is always back to where can you leverage your relationship. So who do you have the right pathway into? Who can you build the right context? Who can you work with to gather some intelligence about the competitive landscape? For who has specific burning platform problems, but obviously then you got to think to your solution. So where do you fit in all of this, and how confident are you that you can have a sensible business conversation with someone about something that matters to them? Present yourself in the right way, assuming you don't know them personally, but you're having enough context to come to that meeting with, that they recognize that you've done your homework, they treat you as a peer, as someone with respect, and you're able to then deliver a compelling proposition, I guess, as part of those conversations. So it's difficult to determine, very objectively where to go, but I think you need to subjectively assimilate all of those conversations, and through the nuances of that intelligence gathering, I think you will understand. I mean, it was always about, is sales an art or a science? I think there is a mixture of the two, and the art part is having that instinct to figure out, look, where is the right place to focus based on the knowledge and the information that I've gathered.
Picking up on that art and science, when should the seller not be the one engaging the stakeholder?
Well, this is something I devote quite a bit of time in one of my chapters, chapter 9, I believe, multi-threading. So I think, and there's some Gartner research that I referenced where between, probably higher now, I think it said 8 to 13 people are involved in the decision from the client side. That's for any type of enterprise deal. If you're doing a strategic, tens of $1 million type of deal, it can be a lot more. But the point is, you are dealing with many people on the client side, whether it's a 50K deal or whether it's a $500 million deal. But you can't manage all of that, for one. If you think you can, I don't think you're able to do that. Anyone out there that believes they can. But the point is, clients don't want to talk to you as the leader, the bid leader, the account manager, the global client partner, whatever role you have. You need to step back and be the maestro, if you will, or the director of the film. So, and orchestrate the right people. And I think that when you do that well, and if you're talking on a deal level here, and you're starting to match people with similar personality styles, maybe, but certainly the right domain and technical expertise. If you're dealing with a technical data privacy person, or you're talking with a business guy about sort of a specific industry that they're responsible for, bringing in the right people that you believe will be the right match. And again, you might be meeting for the first time, but the most important thing is the intelligence gathering to position the right people and use people on the inside to help you. So you really need to balance that and be there in the background, I'd say, obviously orchestrating these things in the right way, and bringing in an equal number of people from your side and the executives as well when the time's right.
So, what signals should I look for to know if the relationship is strong enough to influence a deal?
On the client side,
As the seller, what signals should I be looking for?
so do you mean the strength of the relationship with someone on the client side? Yeah. So
Oh, yes. Thank you.
yeah.
Yes.
So look, the point here is you don't always need to. You won't have strong relationships with all these decision makers. The point is, how do you position yourself so when you get the opportunity, you you start off on the right foot. So if I start from that point and then back to my doctorate research, there's when you meet these key executives, you need to have done the right amount of intelligence gathering and preparation. So this is when I did my doctorate, I interviewed CXOs, so very, very senior people from big global corporations. JP Morgan, actually, I've mentioned them already, but Amex, BP, and I asked them a simple question about who's the who's the best person you've ever worked with from the supplier side, and what made them so special. And we went through all these details, but one specific component we talked about is when you're meeting someone for the first time, what did these people do? And they all could remember, for the most part, when they first met these special individuals that they talked about, and they just felt that they came to the meeting with the right level of knowledge, having prepared, talked to their direct reports, crafted a compelling conversation thread, and that set them on the right stead. So I think don't need to be too concerned about having the right level of relationship with the key decision makers. I think if you've got people on the inside, that's the common theme I see across all the deals I've analyzed, is having a champion or champions on the inside, people that are willing to help you. And without that, I think that's a real zero sum game. So you need the people on the inside that are going to help choreograph these types of conversations and interactions with the key execs, and the people that are sitting beneath them and around them are the ones that actually execute on this stuff. So that's where you're building up the level of support. So when it comes to meeting the execs, obviously start off on the right foot. That will send you on the right trajectory to build relationships. But when you're thinking about entry points, you need to start with people that you already have some type of common ground with, and that's not necessarily you, but it's the wider your wider network that can help facilitate that.
And you mentioned involving your team. What's the best way to involve my internal team in multi threaded outreach without really just overcomplicating things?
Well, I think there is a bit of strategy that is required, to be fair. So, what cadence you might have, if this is a specific account, you may well have weekly or fortnightly meetings. So, bring in the right team. If it's a deal, you'll be going through the same type of cadence structure. So, I think you need some planning. So, a lot of what I espouse in my book is actually the chestnut checkers analogy. So, take the time, don't rush into things. There's always the eagerness to sort of rush in to send a LinkedIn request to somebody because you want to meet them. I'm really saying slow down on all of that stuff and actually take the time to build the strategy. And when you're preparing for a meeting, say for example you've got a meeting with a client, and you know there's going to be a couple of additional people on that call that you want to try and multi-thread around, you actually need to plan for that. So you can do your own research. It can be the soft stuff about sort of where they're from, which hometown they're from, stuff you might have found on their social media about sports teams or any other visits. They might have been on Twitter. They talked about an event they were at. So that needs to be choreographed a bit. So you've got someone on your side who you're trying to pair with that individual. You'd need to feed them with that type of insight and ask them maybe to present that as part of the conversation. But also, if it's trying to build more of a business type relationship, you want to engineer some type of follow-up as part of the engagement. So maybe send a case study or some specific outreach that you would say. You've got the soft side of stuff, if someone you're trying to team up with an individual to create that conversation, and then that same person would suggest a follow-up piece of content, and then after the meeting I'd always suggest they, rather than do a group email, you send a one-on-one email with some type of content, and hopefully that would foster a response, a positive response, and start that channel, that multi-threaded channel. But even if they don't respond, you will be able to activate that network, that channel again later. So and if you reply onto that email, they'll see that you actually reached out and shared something with them. So all is not lost if they don't react in the right way.
Ryan, if you were to emphasize one thing you would want our audience to take away from today's episode, what would that one thing be?
Well, I've mentioned it a few times, and I think it's the secret weapon today that really helps get out of the issues with AI and automation and the automation of research. It's intelligence gathering. If you can use your network to gather insights around the competitor landscape, the profile, and everything else, that is what you should take away. And I gave a few hints as to like how you can orchestrate that in the session. So that is really your secret, your superpower.
Fantastic. Ryan, this has been great. How can people learn more and where can they get in touch with you?
Be a pleasure to connect on LinkedIn. I think that's the place to be. So reach out on that, and I share various content and do similar sessions to this. So it's a great place to catch up with me.
Excellent. If you like what you heard today, please take a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, or YouTube. Let us know what you learned and what you'd like to learn more about. Your feedback helps us reach more people like you and fulfill our mission of elevating the profession of sales. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of everyone at Sales TV, to our guest Ryan and to our audience, thank you for being an active part of today's conversation, and we'll see you next time. Bye all.